All right. So, hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us again at Secular AZ. Again, if you are joining us, feel free to put your name in the chat. And if you are joining us on Facebook, feel free to leave any comments there. We are a nonprofit organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state. And I'm going to say this because they said it at FFRF, and I love this, the separation of religion and government. I'm trying to use that more because church insinuates that it's only one, one faith that is trying to get themselves into all of our government. And so I like the separation of religion and government. So my challenge is to all of you is to give that a try. We have some great programming, including our Friday updates from all kinds of amazing speakers. You know the drill. We have historians, authors, elected officials, journalists. Next Friday, we took a little bit of a break today, talking about Christians and their kind of gun worship. But next Friday, join us for Dr. Andrew Jorgensen of Boston University, as he will be discussing implications of gun worship culture on environmental policy. This is coming from his research, Guns versus Climate, How Militarization Amplifies the Effect of Economic Growth on Carbon Emissions. So don't miss that. But for today, I'm really excited. Today, we are joined by author Kate Cohen. Kate is from Albany, New York, and has a bachelor's degree in comparative literature from Dartmouth. She is a contributing columnist for the Washington Post, has received an Emmy Award and Gold Panda Award for her nonfiction documentary scripts, and is the author of 3 books: A Walk Down the Aisle, Notes on a Modern Wedding, the Nepi Madonna Diaries, Reading Jewish Survival Through My Italian Family, and her latest, which I'm currently reading, We of Little Faith, Why I Stopped Pretending to Believe, and Maybe You Should Too. So, yay! Welcome, Kate.
Yay.
How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you. I'm excited to be with you all.
Good. And again, if you thank you to Lindsay for putting out all of these links so that you can run right out and order a copy of this book, because like I said, I am in the middle of it. And so I encourage all of you to run right out and read it. I almost can't wait for this to end so I can go back to reading it. So
high praise. That's excellent.
So Kate, is there anything from the bio that I missed, or that you want to fill in any blanks or anything?
No. The Emmy and the Golden Panda, those are from, so I still write for a lot of, well, not a lot of other people. I write for other people as well as the Post, and I still, I made a living, and especially when I had little kids, writing other people's words. And so that's what those are. That's what those are from. So it tickles me to hear them because it's a long time ago. But yeah, I thought what I would do, if it's okay with you, is just sort of describe what my book is, and what's in it, and then we can talk about the ideas. We can start the interrogation. So
absolutely, go ahead and let everybody know a little bit about your book and how you decided to write it.
Yeah. So We of Little Faith is really, it's in 2 parts, and the first part is about how I realized that I was an atheist, and came to be honest with first with my kids and then with other people about that. I was raised a Reformed Jew in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and I wouldn't say we were a terribly religious family, but we went to synagogue. We lit the lights on every Friday night. I was bat mitzvah. My sisters were all bat mitzvah. So we kind of did all the things. And if you're Jewish, all the things involve a lot of praise of the Supreme Being. There's a lot of there's a lot of, blessing of the Almighty God, King of the universe. So I was doing all of that, and the whole time I wasn't believing any of it, in the sense that I didn't think that there was an actual supernatural being listening to me when I prayed. I just never believed it. I always thought that God was a kind of incredible, powerful, popular, sort of problematic literary character. I mean, that's really what I felt. But I didn't tell anybody that. So I didn't have those conversations with my parents. I didn't have those conversations with, my bat mitzvah tutors or my Sunday school teachers. I mean, it would never have occurred to me, to be honest, honestly. And then as I grew up, I continued to sort of pretend, to just let people believe whatever they believed when they knew that I was Jewish, or they heard what my last name was, or or I went to holidays, with my in-laws, or I had a Jewish wedding. So it was a range from, like, just letting people believe things to actively deceiving. I did some active deceiving, as you know, you've read the book. And I can't say that I had like a great and urgent reason for that. I just had the reason that everybody has, which is living in a culture, in a country where the presumption is that people believe in a higher power. Sure, maybe different gods, that's, that's okay. Different religions, that's fine. But baseline, just to be a decent person, obviously you believe in God. And I didn't. So I pretended. And because so people would like me, it's embarrassing but true. And I'm hoping relatable. And then and then I stopped pretending. And the reason that I stopped pretending was that I had kids. And I realized when I had kids that I was responsible for everything that they knew about the world. And I suddenly just could not pass along things I didn't think were true. And I think having kids is a real turning point for a lot of people. And for some people, it is definitely a moment when they go back to religion or find religion they never had before, because again, we're sort of taught that that's where, moral authority lies, and that's where community is, and that's how, you teach your kids stuff, is being a part of a faith community. So even people who stop going to synagogue or church, or uh, uh, whatever they were raised in college, and were, not paying attention to it as young adults, then they have a family, then they think, okay, well, it's fine for me to ignore this, but I have this responsibility as a parent. I have to give this to my kids. And I had exactly the opposite. I have this responsibility as a parent. I have to stop it. I have to stop this. I have to not pass this along. And I mean, in the book, I get into why that might be the way that I responded. But so I told my kids that religion was just like myth, except newer, and that God was a human invention. People make up gods, and they do so for perfectly good reason some of the time, because they want to understand how the world works, or they don't understand how the world works, and we went from there, and it was fantastic. And it still took me a long time after that to start to tell other people, to start to be honest, beyond the confines of my little home. But the thing about those damn kids is that they're watching you, and I think I felt that extra responsibility again to sort of be honest, as an example for them, but also maybe to help change things a little bit for them. So I started to tell people, and I really found, to my surprise, that instead of creating distance and friction and judgment. I created like portals to connection with people that, because of course I looked like I was a believer. I, did my best to look like a believer for years and years. So I look at other people and they look like believers and I think, oh, I'll take this leap and I'll tell them what I really think. But they don't necessarily believe either. It was just surprising and wonderful. That's part one of the book. Part two deals with kind of the other reason that people don't raise their children as atheists as often as you would think, or that non-believers don't raise their children that way. And that is, again, that they think religion is where all kinds of good stuff comes from, that they need for themselves and they need to give their kids. So community, as I said before, and morality. And so part two is a chapter by chapter discussion of those things that religion either gives or promises to give, and where an atheist can get those things, if those things are necessary, where an atheist can get them, how you sort of navigate that as a family. But it doesn't have to be about children at all. A lot of it isn't. It's also just about, for myself, where do I get comfort in the face of death? So death is the first chapter because that's the most important one. And then there's a chapter on morality. There's a chapter on church. There's a chapter on prayer, rites of passage, holidays, kind of all these things that make up the fabric of our lives that I think people still need, even if they don't believe there's a supernatural being involved. So that is what part two is. And then I sneak in a third part, which is in the epilogue. And I'll tell you why that came about. When I first started to write the book, or was thinking of writing the book, it was really about kind of the personal rewards of being honest, raising my kids honestly. It's so much easier to talk about the big questions with them without, all this sort of, I don't know, dusty stuff in the way, this sort of other people's ideas of what happens in the afterlife or all that stuff. Clear that out, and then you can really have some great conversation. So I wanted to give courage to other non-believers to live their lives more honestly and to raise their kids more honestly, just for the personal pleasure of it. And then politics started to get scarier and scarier. And it became apparent to me that there was not just a personal reason to be more honest about not believing, but there was a political reason. As Christian nationalism started to gain power and leaders started, one political party started to feel very free to sort of declare this a Christian nation. And the courts began to favor religious belief, individual religious belief, over people's rights, and so on and so on. So it seemed to me that some of the scary things that were happening were because of actual bad people who were using religion to control other people, either because they actually believed that was God's will or because of, they thought that's how they would get power. But I also think that some of what is happening is is a result of a sort of culture-wide assumption that, again, that religion is somehow this special category of belief and we should all defer to it. And I know that there's, you know, terrific clergy pushing back against Christian nationalism and working to keep, shall we say, religion and government separate. um, but I think that there is a place for regular old Americans who don't believe in God to sort of step forward and say, no, you don't get to make laws based on the moral code of a character in a book, you know. And there's something about that very basic, clear, unambiguous no that atheists can provide. And I think that the more that we step up and, you know, speak clearly about what we think, whether it's just in our homes or a little farther out or a little farther out, I think the more other people get the courage to do that. And I think there's just a lot more atheists out there than people know. And I think, you know, we really could have a voice of reason. And so that is another third element of We of Little Faith that that came about just over the course of my being a sentient human being, you know, over the last few years. So that is the overview. I can't. Oh,
Sorry. Right
yeah,
now, too, especially this week,
yeah,
you know, the results from this week,
yeah,
I think, because this is hard work. The work that I do, the work that you do, the, you know, constantly paying attention to everything that's happening in the world is not easy. And sometimes it feels like, you know, 1,000 pounds on your shoulder. And when I woke up Wednesday morning to see some of those results and see this
yeah,
rejection, now
yeah,
we have probably the most overtly Christian nationalist person, Mike Johnson, who
yep.
there was an article by Brad Onishi, and I'm not going to remember the other author's name, but it's in Rolling Stone magazine, all about Mike Johnson. Guess what flag he has outside of his office? It is the Appeal to Heaven flag. And to give you some background, Kate, this flag was actually a legislator in the state of Arizona let us know in the 2022 legislative session that this flag was just suddenly hanging, you know, on the second floor of our House of Representatives. Nobody knows how it got there, who put it there. It was quietly taken down, and it's, you know, made some reappearances on a security guard's desk, on the desk of a legislator who is a Christian nationalist. And so, like, seeing the results, overwhelming results, you know, rejecting these Moms for Liberty type of candidates, or, you know, look at Ohio, you know, who like to be able to get abortion health care and marijuana if they need it, right? And in Virginia, where they flipped the legislature,
I know.
or their state assembly, whatever they call it, the same thing is about to happen here. So I feel like it gives us all a chance to breathe a sigh of relief, but not to entirely stop the fight. But yes,
Yeah.
it's very much in your face right now. Was that part of the reason why you decided to be so, you know, open, you know, was that part of it, or was it just more like, I can't live this lie anymore when it came to raising your children?
I mean, like I say, when they were little and I first made the decision, it was not really part of it. It was not really part of it. Um, I have to say that it is really in our face right now. And the interesting thing about it being really in our face right now, I mean, I don't want to say that it's a good thing. In a way, I feel like they're really overstepping. I mean, certainly with abortion, they have overstepped. It's very clear. And you know, I feel terrible sorrow for the people who have been caught in the middle here, because I really think there's going to be a backlash, and it's gonna change back. In the meantime, there are people who are being forced to have children, people who are dying. I mean, it's upsetting, but I think they have overstepped. And the thing is that it does put you on alert, or put me on alert. And I think if you look back at my columns in the last couple of years, you'll see like there are so many ways in which religion gets this get out of jail free card. I mean, there was just this court ruling, was it yesterday, the day before, in Arizona,
Oh,
right?
yes, yeah. And
Right.
it's great.
So this is
Yeah.
so these, I mean, you know better than I'm sure, but Mormon clergy who were aware that a man was raping his daughter, um, are not going to be held liable for not telling the police because of clergy penitent privilege, you know, and of which apparently is a thing in 33 states, which I didn't even know. So I feel like, and I'm sure has been a thing. I mean, there's so many ways in which, sure, Christian nationalism has brought this like ugly sort of bigoted and cruel element to the fore, and the fall of Roe v. Wade has sort of unleashed this uh, horror on a lot of people in states across America. But there's a lot that religion gets to get away with. That's just been the way it is. So, you know, I feel like we're also kind of beginning to see a lot of these things, or beginning to pay attention to them in ways that we didn't before. Again, because there's been this overreach. But anyway, in answer to your question, no, I mean, I really didn't. I guess it was kind of, there was a dynamic or a snowball effect a little bit. Like I didn't really look forward into the future to sort of see what it could mean, to be honest, just in terms of how it would change my thinking and how it would change the way I look at the world. But it really did. You know, it just started with that very simple, this is a character that people create. This is not the reality. That's all that started with, you know, with my children.
Well, and
Um,
I'm going to go ahead and read a passage that really stuck out to me when I was, and I can't tell you the page number or anything, but when I was a child, I would feel physically ill upon discovering a disconnect between what I had thought and what turned out to be true. I hated to be fooled, misled, deceived, or even persistently mistaken. More precisely, I hated to discover that I had been duped, to cross that dividing line between ignorance and understanding and look back across time at my painfully innocent self. As an adult, I couldn't bear the idea of causing that feeling in someone else, even briefly, even in fun. Like that was, and now I wish I could go back in time, because I even like I told my kids about the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. It's so dumb. Like I wish I had never done that. And I
I
still
mean,
remember
yeah,
when my son found out. Okay, so 9 years old, my son,
yeah.
his dad and I were going through a divorce. We'd been very quiet about it with the kids, trying to figure out what to do next. And he's at 9 years old. He's like, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something really, really serious." And I was like, "Oh shit, here it comes. This is it." He knows that Dad and I are getting a divorce. And he sits me down and he's like, "Okay, so is Santa Claus real or what?" And I was like, and I started crying, and he didn't know why, but I was like, "No, buddy,
Oh
I'm
no.
sorry." Like, yeah, that was, and then a few months later, they all figured out what was going on. But like, I still have that regret of telling them those stories. And you even talk about it with monsters, which I love. Are monsters real? What do we say to kids? No, of course, they're completely made up. But is this crazy God
Yeah.
in the sky that punishes children, like innocent children? Is that real? Totally, it is. Like, That was
Or,
another one that struck
or
me.
I mean, to be fair, yeah. Well, I guess Santa is the crazy one that brings children coals and stuff like that. So I guess you're right about that. But to be fair, I think a lot of what non-believers do in an earnest effort to be like intellectually, um, you know, to have integrity or whatever, and to sort of be intellectually fair to the other side, is to be like, well, I don't believe it, but a lot of people believe it, you get to decide for yourself. And that's where the example of monsters came in, or even whatever noxious, moral belief that people have, that you would never say, well, I think it's fine for people to marry people of the same sex, but some people think you'll burn in hell. You get to decide. You would never. So a lot of what I'm trying to do is just give people the courage to be as sure about the fact that there's not a supernatural creature above us as they are about anything else that they can't prove. You can't prove there's no monsters in the closet right now. I cannot prove it. But I'm pretty sure. So, and pretty
It's
sure, and given the evidence that I see around me, pretty sure that's fine. That's enough. I really feel like people think if I say I'm an atheist, I have to be certain, I have to be able to prove it, I have to be able to, explain the Big Bang, I have to be able to argue with a religious person or know the meaning of life, all this stuff. No, you don't. All you have to do is say, no, that looks made up. That seems like that very suspiciously your God has exactly the same values that you do, or whatever it is. It's sort of, nah, I don't think so. That's enough.
Yeah, like I get frustrated nowadays, with the whole both sidesing of, the
Yeah,
coverage of, say, Moms for Liberty or whatever. Like, we
right.
certainly shouldn't be both sidesing this kind of stuff, these moral questions about, should we accept everybody?
Yeah,
Well, this imaginary guy that we all made up in the sky says no, depending on what sect of his religion you
right,
follow. Like, so,
right.
you can make that decision. That was another really kind of poignant point that you made there. Yes, Diane
Yeah.
says problem of false equivalence. I noticed somebody has their hand up. Please, if you do have your hand up, just go ahead. We do it this way just because, sometimes we get trolls. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. The thing that I like too about your take was, it was less about exposing children to religion and more about protecting them from religion, which I think
Hmm.
is a stance that we all should probably take.
Yeah, I mean, they they were not surrounded by a very cruel or conservative examples of religion. I mean, I have talked to a lot of people since I started this process who came out of, very misogynistic Christian cultures, and our experience here, with my in-laws, for example, was much gentler. Um, but there's an element of control. And there was definitely a point at which, I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet, I had to, sort of say no, and sort of step up and not be my normal get along self, which I think it's hard for some people. It was hard for me, but it's fine. It turned out fine. I think we also build up. I No, I should restate, because I feel like there are people for whom it would be, a sort of a cataclysmic event in their families, to be honest. And I am not asking people to risk things that they're not willing to risk. I really am not. I'm asking people who don't have a lot to risk, which is what I was, um, to be honest, for other people's sake, you know? because there are people in the Bible Belt who'd be risking their jobs, or who would potentially, their children would be targets or friendless or something. There are those people. And I feel like I'm going to be fine, I'm going to be fine. And so I definitely felt this extra responsibility from the fact that, my situation was uh, really risk-free,
Mhm.
not totally, but basically risk-free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Here in Arizona too, we have a very large Mormon population.
mhm.
And I know so many, we call them Jack and Jill Mormons, which are folks who are likely raised in the LDS faith, but who, drink soda with caffeine or alcohol, or like
Right.
whatever, are gay maybe, like, and they just can't bear to tell their families, because one thing that happens in the LDS church too is that there's a big safety net for folks who, especially those I think who have been in the religion for a long amount of time. You've got this social safety net that
Oh,
will
sure.
pick you up. And so to come out of the closet, so to speak, and admit that you're not actually a Mormon anymore is it could be life shattering for some of these people.
Yes.
And in some
Yes.
cases, they'll even lose their families. So we are low
Yeah.
risk in that regard.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so here are a couple of questions. We've got John. Just ask your religious oh gosh, I can never pronounce this word, and interlocutor, how she explains that an all powerful, benevolent God can permit small children to die of cancer. Yeah, that's a tough one to explain.
Yeah,
Case,
and I
yeah,
will
go
say
ahead.
that I do want to say something about that because, well, first of all, I want to make a plug for not debating people, uh, not pointing out the obvious, which I mean obviously and that if that's if that's fun for you, that's fine, but it's not a responsibility. I don't think it's my responsibility, and I want people to who maybe aren't comfortable debating or don't want to be on the spot, to know that they don't have to do that. In terms of this supposedly good, which is always interesting to me, that he's got to be good. He has to be good. Everybody says he's good, but then they have to go and explain, the mass shootings. I just feel like there's something about once you are clear about not believing, it's like there's so much you don't have to twist your logic to fit. They must have to do so much work to make it make sense. And it's sort of a pleasure not to have to do that, not to have to do it.
Oh,
You
the
know,
mental gymnastics that
yeah.
that are required to be a person of faith. There was so many times throughout my life, my parents didn't really raise me with any kind of faith, but then there were other times, I worked with a bunch of women who were,
Mhm.
many of them, more like fundamentalist Christians. And I knew that I didn't want to do that, but I had little kids. And that's when I was like, okay, then I should try the Unitarian church, because there's
Right.
still like God there somewhere. And like I said, they still, at ages 26 and 23, remind me, hey, do you remember when you made us go to church? Sorry, kids,
But
never
you
again.
got to give them something to give you a hard time about. So that
It's
was
true.
that was it, I guess.
There are many other things I'm sure that they could pick out of there, but I never, I appreciate you saying like that also is not something, because I don't want to get into a political or religious debate with people, especially those who hold vastly different views than I do. Chances are neither of us is gonna get any closer to understanding the other person, and so I
Mhm.
appreciate that you give people a pass on that. There's another question here, or I guess maybe a statement from Kay. What scares me about the Christian nationalists in Congress is that they believe that they have God's authority behind them, so that gives them rights, the right to push their crazy legislative ideas and never compromise. They are fixing to shut down the government next week, and they think they may incur God's judgment if they don't push for what that is kind of scary. When you realize, like, when I go places now with my little secular activist lady shirt, and people know who I am when I go to these board meetings, and I've got Turning Point USA operatives who, you'd think that they saw a demon when they see me. I forget. They literally think that I'm a demon. Like, they believe that I am possessed by the devil because I'm bold enough to say, so it is weird to walk amongst these people who really do think that you are that they're in the right, and that their ideas are ordained by God. And yes, we're seeing it more and more. I mean, just look what, so here in Arizona, we had a prominent legislator come out and defend this clergy privilege to not, and he is saying that if this bill gets brought up again, that would mandate that clergy are also reporters of child sex abuse or any other kind of abuse, that they're just not even going to let it get a hearing. They did it last session. They did it several sessions before that. They'll continue to do it because his religion deserves more than a child who's literally being raped by their parent.
Safety. Yeah.
It
is scary. I feel like it should be a disqualification from office. I think Jen Rubin just had a piece about this, basically. Like, you can't say you are only following God's law and also swear that you're going to uphold the Constitution. They are not compatible. So yeah, it's scary. I don't remember what I was meant to be writing a column about the week that Mike Johnson became speaker, but I had to write about that, and Christian nationalism and guns, because that's the other thing. It's not a peace-loving Christian perspective. So yeah, it's scary. It is amazing that a person wouldn't be sort of ashamed to admit that they would rather not protect children from being raped. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And it just shows you how deep that sense of, untouchability runs, I feel like, for religion in this country. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, and what was the first thing that he said about my wife couldn't be here because she was too busy on her knees for the Lord. And I was like, whoa. First of all, if I was a stand-up comedian, there's so much going on there. But also, like, the idea that, like, her entire job, and she also does that weird, like, fake baby voice that all of them do, and they're just all about God, and they have this, like, elevated voice thing that they do, like Duggar, like Michelle Duggar. It's super creepy. It's purity culture. Okay, and this is where I'm going to admit something, because I do watch way too many of the Real Housewives, and my daughter knew because she's trying to get me to watch Real Housewives, and I was like, no, I've never watched a Kardashian, never watched a housewife. You can't make me do it. The gateway drug was the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. She knew that I would not be able to turn it down, because these women are all like living like the Real Housewives, where they have parties and stuff like. But one of the characters, when I watched it with my daughter this week, because we have a standing date every Wednesday to watch the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Please forgive me, y'all. But one of the people on the show talked about how she was so proud that her daughters, that she left the church, despite the Scarlet Letter A and everything else. She was excommunicated, blah, 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 blah. But now that her daughters are the first in her lineage that do not have to abide by purity culture. And the fact that on Bravo, I'm sorry, y'all, but on the Real Housewives show, they're actually talking about purity culture. Perhaps this is how we save the world. I don't know.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to watch that. Tell your daughter. She might have gotten another one.
I apologize in advance because they're all
Okay.
terrible people. It doesn't even matter. Mars, I love what Mars says. Mars says, I am going to say, hi, I'm Mars. I'm an atheist. There's no God. Christian nationalism is a problem every time I meet somebody now. I support that, Mars.
All right, excellent.
Deborah says, I feel like you're telling my story. Bonnie's happy to be here, albeit a little bit late. And yes, dialogue like this is how we can reach greater understanding. The other thing that I really, really like that you said, because again, I had no problem. I loved Greek mythology as well.
Mhm.
And so I loved your example about how you talked about Greek mythology. And there's this one sentence that really stuck out. The Greek myths are obviously stories. The Norse myths are obviously stories. Joseph Smith and L. Ron Hubbard obviously just made that shit up. Extrapolate. And it's like this list of all the things. But like, I just love the fact that, we need to do more of that. Is there a monster in my closet? No, that's completely made up. It's all pretend. Like, Greek mythology. Yeah, they're great stories that we can
Yeah,
learn from. Is
right.
God? Not true. Yeah,
Yeah.
unapologetically. Let's see. And again, if anybody does have any questions, the other thing that I like that you said too is about the 10 commandments. And now we've got all these states, right, that are mandating that the 10
Mhm,
commandments be
mhm.
posted in their schools. And I love the snarky response that some people have put together about like, well, we'll have it written in Arabic then, or whatever. And so I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that part in the book where you talked about how, supposedly we have this moral code, the 10 commandments,
Yeah.
and yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, so that's in my chapter, I think, about morality. Because morality, so I really feel like death is why religion was invented. But morality is really why people think they really have to stick with it. They really believe. I think even some, non-believers still have the sense that morality comes from religion, that is where we get the rules about what's right and wrong. So I get to spend the first part of that chapter dispelling that notion. And it's pretty easy to do because all you have to do is show how some people focus on certain parts of the Bible, say certain verses, and some people focus on other verses and ignore certain verses. And how are they choosing which thing is more important? They have their own innate morality is the answer, so they are bringing their sense of right and wrong to their holy books, not the other way around. And atheists can do exactly the same thing. We have an innate sense of right and wrong. We have ways to determine how to treat other people, and just like religious people do. We just don't have to sort of pass it through, a holy book or the Ten Commandments. Well, the Ten Commandments, they do come up all the time, and there are Republican legislators saying that if we only had the Ten Commandments posted in classrooms, I don't know, we wouldn't have school shootings. I mean, seriously. So I do get to have a little fun at the expense of the Ten Commandments, which really just boil down to 6 commandments, because the first 4 are just about you have to believe in God. You really, really have to believe in God. Don't you even think about not believing in God. And then there's 6 other commandments, and some of them are useful, but but none of
I
them
love
is. Go ahead.
I love how you pointed out too, like, just posting these in a school, a clever middle schooler is going to be
Yeah,
like, hey, it doesn't say
it's not.
anything about poking my
That's right.
seatmate with a pencil up there.
It's not in the rules. It's not in the rules, No, no. And even the Ten Commandments, what we think they mean all comes from what we think is right and wrong. Some people interpret thou shalt not kill in some ways, that it would also include, let's say, not having capital punishment or not having war. And some people would interpret it a different way. So it's not, it's all, again, us bringing our own morality to bear. And so atheists don't, religious people don't need it either. And so atheists are just doing the same thing. And it's kind of helpful, actually, again, to clear that stuff out, not have to worry about what the sort of complications of God's law or what Jesus said or didn't say or anything like that, and just go from, treating people the way you would want to be treated. It's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. So I'm dying to know. I also really liked your your chapter about holidays and celebrations. Does your family still celebrate International Pizza Day?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Very important.
I love that story. That's a great story.
International Pizza Day. So, I mean, holidays are, I would say that my book is very sort of compassionate in terms of, the way people had to get along with other people and they have families. And I never would say, stop celebrating, Christmas, or don't light the Hanukkah lights, or don't do things that make you happy. That's ridiculous. But I did want a holiday that that felt more meaningful to me. I did want a holiday that felt more meaningful to me. I was happy to do. I'm happy to make Christmas cookies. I'm happy to do, that stuff. I'm happy to light Hanukkah lights, but I also wanted something that was truly, truly meaningful to me. And I don't know, the International Pizza Day kind of became that thing. When we first celebrated it, was completely on a lark. It was inspired by a book called Pizza for a Queen, or Pizza for the Queen, by Nancy Castaldo. It was a children's book, reading a children's book to my kids. And it suggested at the end of the book that if you wanted to, you could celebrate International Pizza Day, which was February 9th. And it was like, that was a few days away. And so I thought, great. I'm like, parent at home with my kids. I was always looking for things to do. So we made our own pizza and we celebrated International Pizza Day. And then it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And now we have, like, I guess maybe like 60 people come. My parents come. It's been years. I mean, my youngest, who's 23 now, I think he was 5. And it is, like I say, it sort of turned into a meaningful holiday, because it really celebrates getting together, eating, being generous, making delicious things from very simple things, all kinds of stuff that I believe in. Making things from scratch, because we make our pizzas from scratch.
I was going to say, your
Yeah.
pizza game must be on point at this stage.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But it's also a pain. It's a big pain. And I definitely think that your holiday, to be a real holiday, it has to be a huge pain. You have to be like exhausted at the end, or if it doesn't really count. So, I mean, the problem with International Pizza Day is that you don't have that sense that you have with Christmas or something, that everybody around you is celebrating the same thing. And I miss that. I miss that. And I would hope that we can spread International Pizza Day far and wide, and that we can sort of retroactively give me the holiday that I want. But
I think we
yeah,
have
that
some
was a fun one.
converts here today. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's a great holiday. Great holiday.
oh, National Election Day. That is a good one too.
Yeah,
We'll
that would be
celebrate
a
it.
good one. I mean, I think I'm a big fan of tax day because I just really love but I don't think we can get people on board for that one. But yeah, I think election day should be a holiday. Yeah, maybe I'll
Oh, these
think
are
about
so
that.
great. I just
Yep.
gotta, okay, so let's see. I don't think movements like Convention of the States are concerned with legality. They simply write what they, yeah, okay, talking about, yeah. Let's see. How does a Texas teacher explain commandment number 7 about adultery? I don't want to know because you're not even allowed to talk about sex in school, so whatever.
Oh,
Um,
that is a wonderful point.
so
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those movements to like, oh, we have to ban the Bible because it's got all this horror, this, salacious material. But that is amazing point about the Ten Commandments. I love it.
yeah. Let's see. Mars suggests hanging the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. I'm with you on that one. They're great tenets.
Yep.
Let's see. Is there the invention of lying? Is there an age dimension in the way we atheists communicate with believers? This is a great question. The invention of lying. Is there an age dimension in the way we atheists communicate with believers?
Let's see. Meaning that if they're kids, we don't necessarily say what we think,
I'm not really
or
sure, but the way
can you
I took,
type in again,
yeah,
dear
J Rob,
questioner?
go ahead. But I almost
Work
feel
on
like,
that.
I taught middle school and high school for many years, and I had
Yeah.
a favorite mentor teacher who was incredible. She taught 7th and 8th graders social studies, and her classroom was
Mm.
amazing. And she said, "You know what I do? I explain everything like they're kindergartners." And then she said, "I do that at our staff meetings as well." It's true. So maybe that's what we need to do is explain religion as if we're talking to kindergartners. That might be a good way to do it.
I mean,
Let's see. Go ahead.
I do, my approach, I guess, to saying things that I think I'm afraid might be shocking or I think people might disapprove of or might be upsetting is to just be super cheerful about it. To pretend that, of course, I mean, it's sort of the same way of, of course, this is one among many myths, and this is, how people to pretend that it's fine to say it. I guess that sometimes is what I tell myself two things. Just pretend it's fine to say, and that'll make it fine to say is one thing. And the other thing is, again, you just don't know. The person that you're talking to may feel just the same way and not have felt like they could say it to someone else. So you might be doing someone an incredible service,
Mhm.
um, to be honest about what you believe and give them a chance then, they not necessarily to match exactly what you believe, but to talk about things that people don't talk about. So I try to think that I'm potentially providing that service to other people.
I think that there's something really to be said about normalizing. And I loved how you shared
Hmm.
your journey of like feeling like, oh, I can't say this, or I'll
Right.
just kind of skirt the question and not answer it directly. And then every single time that you did it, you realized, oh, like this is actually opening doors, not closing
Right.
doors. Like people
Right.
really, they want to talk about that. And even maybe to have an opportunity to, like, there was one example, maybe it was somebody from your children's preschool, and
Hmm.
you were like, I don't really believe in it, and they were like, oh yeah, of course. Like it was like, no, none of us do. We just go because we're
Yes.
supposed
Right.
to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That has just been a really interesting revelation, for me, I guess. And of course it's obvious, right? I mean, again, you sort of, if you just extrapolate from your own experience, you would know that uh, people's behavior doesn't necessarily match their beliefs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've got a
That's
question up here from Mark,
okay, good.
and he wants to know, how did your publisher initially respond to your topic?
Well, I would say that my publisher responded incredibly well, but that publisher was probably, the 150th publisher who got a chance to respond to my topic. So, I had a really it's a Godine is a very small press. I had a terrific editor who was with me for the really for the manuscript writing part. I would send
Yeah.
chapters in progress, and um, he's very different from me. He's a much more sort of strident non-believer, strident atheist, and he would kind of push me to be more like him. But it was great because he also gave me a sense that of the value of what I was doing, and of a little bit of courage. I got a little like middle-aged white male courage through him. A little of that kind of um, confidence. I think it was really wonderful. I think I ended up with a stronger statement than I had started with. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful that they took it on, because like I said, it's funny because there are a lot of people, I think there were, for some in sort of New York publishing, it's sort of like, well, yeah, I mean, isn't everybody an atheist? you know, and then there's some who, so I think so getting people to see that there's a lot of us out there all across the country who do need a little bit of courage, and that there is a sort of a general issue in this country about deferring to religion and giving permission to religion to discriminate against people.
Yeah.
I think that was a point that Godine understood immediately that other people didn't necessarily. It helped to have my work in the Post,
Yeah.
and the Post has also been really, I mean, probably there've been, I don't know, a dozen pieces. I mean, there was that big one that was about the book, but um, I take a lot of opportunities to point out some of the backwardsness, I guess, of the way that a supposedly secular country works. So that helped.
And I mean, I'm going to say one more little thing that we have in here. Ian says that I have friends who hold a winter festival of pie at the end of the year. Everyone comes and brings a pie, dessert, savory, pizza, whatever, and gets to eat what people bring once they get there. So I love that. We're talking about sushi solstice.
Oh,
There's
I
all
love this. I can't wait to read these after
I know there's
not
some
looking.
really great suggestions in here, but we are at 1 o'clock, and I love your book. I plan
Thank
on
you.
purchasing it and giving it as gifts, probably to my daughter and her husband, because especially for me, the chapters of how to raise your children, you just do such a great job, I think, of making what for some of us feels like a taboo subject, like it's
Right.
not, and it shouldn't be.
It
and
shouldn't
s-
be.
and and so your approach to it, I think, is required reading for a lot of people, especially the white Christian nationalists who are in office, but they'll never read it. But so, you know,
Yeah,
a girl can hope.
it shouldn't be taboo. And that is, just making it normal to talk about, and making it normal to say, nah, I don't, nah, I think that's made up. I really want people to be more comfortable doing that, and also to enjoy a fun read. So that was the other thing,
It's
honestly.
it's a it's a very fun read. Again, I can't recommend it enough. We Have Little Faith,
Thank you.
Kate Cohen, such a good book, such an important topic and such a timely topic. So thank you not only for writing all the writing that you do, but for coming and joining our little ragtag group of atheists, agnostics, and humanists here today.
Oh, it's a total pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.